4, 3, Jason 6, 5, 1, 2, 1. Eric Wright's a maker, thinker, puppeteer, performer, tinker. But to get it done, he knows 2 heads are better than 1. You'll be delighted at who he's invited to come on by. Get inspired and give their tricks a try. Their work and processes will ignite your own curiosities. Spark authentic conversation. We love your participation. With Katie standing by, let's start the connection. It's Puppet Time Online at Puppet Kitchen.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Puppet Time Online. I'm your host, Eric Wright. Puppet Time Online is your chance to sit down with some of the puppetry community's finest and me and hear about what they know about. As usual, it's brought to you by the Puppet Kitchen, and from design to build to perform and coaching, Puppet Kitchen does it all. So thanks, Puppet Kitchen. And as usual, I have Katie here running the show.
Hey everyone. Also, did you just thank yourself?
No, I thanked Puppet Kitchen. It's an independent entity, which I happen to
legally it is
run
separate from you.
That's right.
Okay.
Thank
Continue.
you. Keep Katie there, keeping me honest. And more importantly, she's watching all of your comments and questions. So if you have anything to say or join in the chat, put it down in the chat here. We're on YouTube and also Facebook Live and also on Twitch. So we want to hear from you. I'm super excited to have our guest on today. This is episode 52. One of my dear friends whom I've known for a long time, an actor, puppeteer, and fellow pod person, my partner in crime in Little Shop of Horrors. It's Teddy Yudain. Hi, Teddy.
Hey, how's it going? I can't believe this is episode 52.
I know.
That's why. That's a year's worth of weekly shows.
It's crazy.
That is crazy. Also crazy, the last time I was on the show, my hair was not this long.
It's really true. Yeah, when you were on the show last, you were one of our very first interviews.
I'm humbled by it.
Back when we were on Instagram Live,
Mm-hmm.
and now we have this fancy new setup.
Yeah,
Landscape
it's great
format.
to be in the studio.
I know, it's really so nice, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, I'm really excited to have you back on the show because, I mean, aside from the fact that Little Shop has been announced, like that we're coming back and we're both going to be there in the pod with first public performance on September 21st.
Mm-hmm.
That is the 21st day of the month of September, Little Shop Day.
Yep.
I'm super excited to get back in the room with you. But also so much has been happening with you over this summer when it comes to puppetry. And I'm really excited to talk with you because you've been like really active in all of the puppetry, like online classes and training and all of that stuff, which is super cool.
Yeah, it's been great.
Yeah. So before we get to that, just because we're in the new format, we're in the new studio and everything like that, let's just have a little refresher as usual. Why don't you, we always ask our guests how they got into puppetry. I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about that.
Absolutely. Hi, everybody. So I think that the way that I got into puppetry as a professional is kind of fun. But I went to the University of Connecticut, but as an actor. And it was obviously it's known for its puppetry program. It's one of the few places you can get a degree in puppetry. And I got to do some puppets there. I had this very magical kind of class where the actors were meeting with Bart Rockaburton, the head of the puppetry program. And he came in and was just kind of explaining, like, this is what we do in the puppetry program. Right. And he did these demonstrations with these masks and with paper puppets and burlap puppets. He gave us his, like, this is like what puppets other than the Muppets can look like and what they can kind of do. And I remember just sitting there like blown away in the back of my seat, like, what am I doing not in this puppetry program? How can I do this? And and luckily I got to do a little bit of puppets there, but it wasn't until a few years afterwards when a puppeteer, Stefano Brancato, said, "Hey, I'm doing this puppet opera with the Gotham Chamber Opera and Blind Summit Theater and Tectonic Theater Project. You should audition for it because they're looking for actors that could be into puppetry." And I was like, yeah, sure. And that show was really what like kickstarted my career, like in working with you at the Metropolitan Opera with that company, and yeah, like that was really what started it. But I always have been a fan of puppets, and specifically, I guess like the Muppets was my first place. I loved the Muppet movies as a kid. I loved Eureka's Castle, all of those like Nickelodeon shows. Those were always so magical to me. And I had lots of puppets as a kid. I have this puppet that I had when I was a small child that I recovered at my family home. His name is Mark Camel. How do you do? He was this. I went home recently, found so many puppets as a kid, puppet toys, and I just had them around. And I mean, I think like, yeah, the 80s and 90s were just like a boom time for puppet entertainment in general, and like in film and television. But I never realized that I could make the puppets or like perform the puppets. I didn't realize that was an actual job until I like got to UConn.
Yeah. So now that you're here, also the follow-up we like to ask all of our guests is now that we know about how you got into puppetry, what keeps you in puppetry?
What keeps me in puppetry? I think like one of the more practical things, like the reason I kept kind of doing puppetry was because people kept asking me to. It was like once I met initially, I was like, this is cool. The thing that I realized about it was that it utilized all the things that I loved doing as a performer. Yeah. It was physical. It was kind of like, it was theatrical and over the top. Realism didn't necessarily matter, but it used all of that. It required all that sensitivity that goes into realism and naturalism, like understanding natural movement and understanding like psychological gestures. So it used all this stuff that I had worked on in my acting training, but then also embraced like, physical theater and using materials and kind of abstract pictures and thought. And I like, once I did more and more and got exposed to more and more puppet artists, I realized that like the boundaries were endless. Like literally anything is possible. And that's like just the most exciting thing to me. I think that as an actor working in like musical theater or Shakespeare, that was a lot of the stuff I did. Like there's kind of the canon. There's like the set stories that you're doing and the things that you're going out for. And with puppetry, people were creating all new stories or retelling old ones in like new and creative ways. And there are as many different kinds of puppets and kinds of puppet theater as there are puppet artists in the world. Yeah. So like, it's literally endless. There is no lack of inspiration.
Yeah.
So I think that's what it is for me.
So you've been, like I mentioned, over the summer, you've been really digging into all of these puppet classes that are available online, which I think is totally fascinating. And I'm really curious what your experience has been in each one of them, and also, like the differences between them, because it seems in some ways like because puppetry is such a visual medium and it's such a collaborative medium where a lot of the workshops that I've been a part of or led have really depended on being in the same room with people. And we don't have that opportunity. We didn't have that opportunity during lockdown. And though we have a little bit of that now, you don't have that ability to be face to face with people. Mm-hmm. But what you do have is the ability to learn from people all over the world. And you've been studying. So tell me about some of the courses that you have been taking this summer.
Yeah, absolutely. The first one that I took, the first online course that I took was last summer with Puppets in Prague, which is this amazing organization that has been running these annual summer workshops, these like two or 4 week intensive workshops teaching like traditional Czech marionette construction techniques. They're in the two options of the class. You can either go for 2 weeks and you just make a puppet in that time. They teach you the design process, what goes into specifically Czech marionettes, and then by the end you work with this master puppet builder, Mirek Tretnar, who studied at this university in Prague because they just like they love puppets over there. Right. And his wife Leah, who helps run the program, and you're meeting with all these people from around the world. They adapted it for online, and so I had been thinking about, I had wanted to do this for a few years because as a performer, I didn't know much about what it actually took to build puppets. And I was really interested in like what actually goes into it. I didn't know where to begin, like what materials, where do I get them? What's best? And this seemed like an ideal place. And it was incredible. What they did was they had a bunch of online classes where in the beginning we met with Mirik. He kind of did a lecture on like, these are the basic design considerations. And then we had a one-on-one meeting with him to take a sketch we had made and turn that into a puppet. He like figured out what kind of control you're going to use. And, you know, the ears might be too big. Like think about taking them in because strings are going to get caught, things like that, all these practical considerations. And he cut all the wood himself on the bandsaw in Prague and then shipped them out all across the world to all the different students. This way you could kind of start with a great, like solid base.
Right.
Because like joints and connections and all that stuff is like a whole other, and like actually cutting the wood, that's a whole other skill set that not everybody has access to. And then proceeded with doing these online courses where he broke it down like step by step. This is how to carve a face. This is how to carve arms and legs and a body, and then like stringing, and then some classes on basic kind of performance notes. And it was like step by step and methodical. And they made videos that were accessible for us, like outside of the time from the classes, so you could kind of go back and look at things more closely and pause. Yeah. And by the end, I got this Czech marionette.
Yeah. Wait, can we see him? Can you bring him in a little bit?
Absolutely. So
this is crazy because you had never done any wood carving before.
I had done the barest bit of wood carving at the O'Neill conference a couple years ago. I had the marionette strand with Jim Rose, but then it wasn't really wood carving. I was taking like wood pieces to a sander.
Sure.
Like, so this was real in-depth. Not only was it teaching puppets, but he was just teaching basic kind of wood carving knowledge. Like we had to buy chisels and sharpening stones, and he was like, this is how the grain runs. So it was like a whole new world.
That's incredible.
And so this is my character Barnaby the elf. My first all wooden marionette.
That's amazing. Well, he has little. He has little pants. He has like a costume on.
Fully. They give us notes on like how to costume them, like know how to attach it to the body. And so he's like a fully formed, fully finished puppet, and I've even made a short film with him. That I made during the pandemic. But yeah, this is him. And he is like fully carved from linden wood and painted and finished. And then, these are like little shorts that I made. And I had to go to a YouTube video to see like, how do you make shorts? Because once I finished carving this puppet, I was like, great, I have all this knowledge. Now I have to clothe it. Now I have to be a costumer. So like, again, I love
the combo of painted and fabric costume. I love that these little straps are real straps.
Yeah, I knew I wanted to give him pants, but in addition to not being sure about making a full costume for this puppet, I also they said, embrace that. If you don't have to make the costume, don't do it. Just paint it on the body. Whoops, sorry, that was kind of horrifying. But and then having the straps again to just like give that little hint of kind of realism and texture and add a little bit more life to it.
What would you say is like the total time you spent from? I mean, you sent the design, and the design took some time, right? You sent the design, and then you got these blocks back from Prague. Yeah, that you started carving on. What was what's the time commitment from getting those blocks to like finished painted puppet?
I want to say it was about a month. It was maybe a month or so. It could have been a little bit longer because it was still also early on in the process when they were kind of figuring out their system and we were figuring it out. But I want to say it was like a little bit over a month. We did, I want to say 2 or 3 classes a week where we kind of learned, and then it was just hours and hours of chipping away literally at the wood and then and getting it all together. And it was some long nights, but it was about a month. And it was incredible. And I've taken quite a few of their other workshops that they've done since. They've hosted marionette workshops. They've hosted a workshop specifically on just costuming, like what to consider when costuming for puppets, on toy theaters, on making automata and kind of like hand cranked sort of things. They did a whole thing on how to make a puppet show, like storytelling kind of basics and what to consider when making theater for puppets. They kind of cover it all. They're an incredible resource. They've been an incredible resource for me during the pandemic.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
So, and you said that was last summer that you were a part of that?
Yeah, that was last August, September when I was a part of that.
And then you took the O'Neill program. You went to the O'Neill virtual conference this summer, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Were there workshops in between?
Yeah. So in between those, so after I made this wooden puppet, I really got bitten by the bug. I was like, sure. I really fell in love with working with wood and the material, and I kind of loved these traditional puppet making techniques. Like, they made us feel this sense of kind of passing the baton as puppeteers and carrying the art form forward, and keeping these old traditions alive. And that really kind of was inspiring to me, especially using like natural materials and stuff. I was just reading an old blog of Ronnie Burkett's actually the other night when he was talking about making his how he makes his puppets, and he was using cellulose or no celluclay, yeah, and talking
like
about
paper
how
clay kind of situation,
the paper clay stuff. And he was talking about how there was a period of time in like the 20th century where a lot of people were starting to use more toxic materials and things that they paid for later because they didn't realize the kind of toll they would take on their physical body. Right. And yeah, there's like something romantic to me about learning traditional wood carving and like the things that puppeteers have been doing for hundreds and thousands of years. Yeah. And so as a result of that, I was kind of turned on to Bernd Ogrodnik, who is a puppeteer who lives in Iceland, right, and is pretty much exclusively works in wood. And he offered a month-long foundation course in an introduction to making wooden puppets, and then subsequently a year-long program called the Academy of the Wooden Puppet, which I also am taking part in currently right now.
That's amazing.
And so it basically was kind of, if Puppets in Prague was like the crash course in wooden puppets, Bernd is like the kind of even more in-depth, like step-by-step whole process of working with wooden puppets in all different styles, hand puppets, rod puppets, all the way up to marionettes. And also not only that, but like learning how to really make your own joints and really complex kind of mechanisms all with wood. And I have a couple of things that I've made with him.
Oh yeah, I'd love to see that.
The first thing I made with him was this tiny little, what he calls a buddy puppet, in his foundation course of the wooden puppet. It's just a little guy, and he's kind of supposed to be like a little portrait of me.
Yeah.
But he kind of works. He kind of like just walks on this pendular movement. Let's see if I can put my camera down. Kind of just like he's really simply kind of joined with these screws on the side for his arms, and then the idea is you can operate him with one hand. And
that's really cool.
But with this, he kind of taught like the basic considerations, and everything being kind of cut out of wood except for these joints.
Yeah, that's amazing. That actually reminds me of the Tin Man puppet that I have. It's like a very, very similar. Hold on, I'll get it.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, here we go. So like, he doesn't have any arms or anything, but very similar idea for the legs, that like he just walks on a little pendulum action.
Yeah.
By kind of swinging him side to side. Hard to do in midair on my hand, but like neck on a spring.
Yes.
And like a little hook on the back, so you can operate.
Oh yeah, that is like the exact same design. That's all of the same basic elements.
That's really crazy.
That is incredible. Yeah, and with this foundation course, I had already been into it with Puppets in Prague. Like I had like specialty chisels and all this stuff, and he said you can do this all with just a carving knife. And he taught us like the basic cuts that you can make, and kind of knife safety and sharpening techniques and all that stuff. But he's his whole approach is he wants to teach it so you can, even with the most like minimal of tools and materials, like get yourself into making wooden puppets. Which has been great. And I think like there's been a theme of anything this year with all the workshops I've been taking, it's the sense of agency, and like being able to take what you have and make out of it, make something, tell your story.
That's cool.
Yeah. And
so do you how do you line up the, a lot of times when we talk about puppet design or like creating puppets, they're made in conjunction with a story, or they're made in conjunction with a show in mind. But this is a little bit different, right? They're sort of like, these are kind of practice techniques. Mm-hmm. Are you then applying the things that you've made to, are you making stories with them? Are you using them like to create, a show of some kind?
Yeah, that has been the interesting thing. It has been like I've been kind of making them in a void. Like you said, like there wasn't for none of these. There isn't like initially a project in mind. It's all about just kind of learning the techniques. But as I build them, I think, okay, like what do I want to make a show about? And it's great because, I don't have a client that I'm working for that I'm, trying to meet some kind of design that they've created, or that I'm not going to let anyone down. But I have since made some projects with the puppets that I've made. I made this short film with Barnaby the Elf. It was a request from Puppets in Prague. It was for a holiday party. They said, hey, like if anybody has any projects that they've done with their puppets, any little shows or films, we can show them at this holiday party. And I took that initiative and I said, okay, I'm going to actually make something with this puppet that I've built. And so I filmed this short film that I had an idea for that was kind of holiday themed. I kind of had a New Year's theme. I think there's actually like there's a little picture of it.
Of that from the, what is that one? What was the title of that film?
It's called Together Apart. Just a working title. But it was this
very appropriate, I would say.
Yeah.
There you go.
I made this. I made this around the holidays, and I got the idea that I wanted to do something to the song "What Are You Doing New Year's Eve," specifically the Carpenters recording, because it's just this incredibly beautiful song. Karen Carpenter's vocals are so beautiful and so wistful, and it captured this real kind of emotion for me around the holidays at that time, not being able to see folks and wanting to be together, but also knowing that we were all kind of safe. And so I made this short film with this marionette, and I made little sets, and everything else was pretty much made out of cardboard because I just needed to get it done. But he was the only kind of fully 3-dimensional character.
Awesome.
And it was incredibly rewarding. And I realized as soon as you want to do anything with a marionette, you need another set of hands. So my wife, Allison, helped me with all the filming. She also helped puppeteer some other things for me. Nice. And it was incredibly rewarding experience. Just like getting that project done. Cause like I said, I've been a performer for most of my puppetry career. I haven't made a lot of things, and this thing was like a real kind of a triumph for me in the pandemic, that I actually have just like this 3 minutes of thing that I'm very, very proud of, and using the skills that I picked up.
Had you done any short film before? Had you done it or did you have to learn all of that, like editing and camera work and all that kind of thing? I
mean, I did a little bit of kind of short form video stuff in college and in high school. We did a lot of movie making in high school, and like stuff we'd edit in camera. We just film everything in sequence and rewind the tape back. And in college, I did similar kind of stuff where I started learning more about editing software. And so I've done some things and it's like sketch comedy. I used to do some sketch comedy in the city, and we made a couple of videos, but like I still felt like I was kind of learning a whole new thing. I was on Final Cut. Like somebody had access to Final Cut Pro, and so I was using all this stuff. And I was learning as I was going, as far as lighting, lots of technical things with lighting and how many shots I needed to get, framing things for these puppets and making sure I was getting the right angle and lighting them correctly and not casting shadows. There was a bunch that I was learning on the fly.
Was that all through trial and error, or did you reach out to people and say, I'm trying to do this thing, or watch YouTube videos, or like, how did you learn how to do it?
It was kind of on the fly. I really was. I should have reached out. I should have reached out, but I kind of did it all on the fly. I just kind of I would film a test, and then I would go back and run to my camera and see like if that looked good.
Sure.
And sometimes I'd flip the phone around and I would see if I could perform for myself using a little bit of a monitor.
Right.
But because also the other thing with the internet is like there's so much out there. There's so much kind of conflicting advice. If you don't know exactly what you're looking for, it can be really hard to realize the thing you are looking for, and kind of which also has been the case with how to make puppets. Like you can search like how to make puppets online, and there are just thousands and thousands of resources, but you don't necessarily know like what kind of specialty material they're going to ask for, like this thing that you don't have access to.
Well, and a lot of them are geared towards Muppet style TV puppet making.
Yeah.
So it's hard to find resources on, you kind of have to borrow resources from carving videos, or, like each of the skills individually. How do you make a complex joint, or how do you make your first automaton, thinking, okay, this is wood that moves, so that will be.
Because there are like there's kind of like the basic skills, and then you have to say, okay, but I'm also making this for something that's meant to be performed, and it really is like that's when you have to get in touch with puppeteers. That was also the kind of one of the joys of getting into the woodworking. Like once I started working with that, then I really got into just general sort of woodworking. I was like, oh, this is actually like a real world skill that has all their practical uses, not just puppets. And so I've kind of, I've started looking at YouTube videos of, making tables and chairs, and, what sort of like decorative stuff can you make? I kind of have dreams of building puppets out of wood, and then also making my millions selling like custom house numbers or something like that, or like gift shop items.
Well, one of our friends of the Puppet Kitchen, Brendan Yifute, who started or who we met, did an apprenticeship at the Puppet Kitchen, became a builder at the Puppet Kitchen, like was very in the puppet scene. Also did that same kind of thing. He studied at a woodworking school in Maine, and now like has a whole shop in Salt Point, New York, where making custom furniture, and like that's his whole thing. And like he's officially like full on a woodworker now. It's really amazing.
That is incredible.
Yeah, and his stuff is really good too.
I gotta check that out.
So it's definitely like there's a pathway there.
Yeah, exactly.
So besides so you made this little buddy puppet. What other kinds of things have you done in this woodworking class? So
I made this little buddy puppet, then I signed up for his year-long course. And so he said, okay, we're going to take you through the very beginning. So the next thing I made was this hand puppet. We learned carving, and he was like, this is how to carve a head with sort of realistic proportions. He said, puppetry, you don't necessarily want to, realistic proportions don't always help us in puppet stories. They don't always read well from stage, and also like you just get a lot more character from other things, but this is how to make some kind of very delicate hands and a realistic sort of head. So I made this horrifying simulacrum of myself. And you can see he's actually made from this piece of like kind of wood that had this horrible knot in it.
Yeah.
But I was kind of like, I'm just here for the skills. I'm not necessarily making this guy for anything, although now he's such a strong character now that like kind of needs something. But this is him with just a basic kind of hand puppet body. But I learned how to make these kind of like very sort of delicate wooden hands. Thanks. I'm trying to, oh geez, you can tell I haven't done a lot of monitor work right here. But he's got these like very kind of delicate wooden hands, and his head, which I also painted and finished in the kind of way that I learned from puppets in Prague. Sure. He's got these like tiny little eye veins, because I imagine he's this wizard who suffered a terrible sort of accident on another plane of existence and lost all of his hair subsequently.
Yes, exactly.
These are all the choices that I made because I was too lazy to make a wig. But also like this detail, like you're never going to see that detail on stage with a hand puppet thing.
Yeah.
And this is like the great learning process for me is like,
well,
I had this great idea that no one can see unless he's right here.
And then really everyone moves back a little bit.
And then everyone's like, oh, good God.
Well, I think it's a great example of like incorporating the things that you like, the puppet as it goes into the character that it's becoming. You
Yes,
know,
absolutely.
saying,
Like,
you know, this big gash in his head, now that's just his character. Like
yeah, that's who he is, and that's what
who
I
he
had to
is.
work with, and that's who this character is. And also, yeah, like I kind of introduced him to the group on Facebook that I'm in, and you know, for the Academy of the Wooden Puppet, and people were like, "I kind of like him bald," and I was like, "Yeah, I guess I'll just keep him there. I'll make a wig for something else." But that's the other thing. The thing that was holding me back, kind of before all these classes, like I said, was like, I don't know what materials to get. I don't know where to get them. And I just learned with taking these classes and getting materials lists that you just have to have so many bits and bobs and odds and ends lying around if you want to make a puppet. You have to have some raw material.
You have to have
Whether
stuff.
You have to have stuff, whether it's cardboard and rubber bands or bamboo skewers or string. Like, string is so valuable, and like as a regular person, I don't know if I own string that's not for puppet making. So like I really for a while I was at such a loss. I was like, how do people make puppets with just their socks and shirts and I had, like, you know, just my clothes and my books. Like,
Sure. Katie's laughing right now because over the years I have amassed every single piece of string that I come across, I keep. And there's just piles of string, of different kinds of string all over the house. And
Bernd in his classes is like, you know, he just pulls out this box that's full of beads and springs from all sorts of stuff. And he's like, yeah, whenever you go somewhere and you find some springs, just pick them up. And I live in, like, you know, 1,000 square foot, probably it's like, you know, 500 square foot apartment in New York City, and like this is at a premium, but
better puppetry through hoarding.
Yeah, but and just recently, there was my wife was cleaning some of the apartment and said, "Hey, can I finally get rid of this pile of cardboard you've been saving since the beginning of the pandemic? It, like, made up of all these Amazon boxes and this pile of wire hangers." And I was like, "Yes, you can get rid of them,
I suppose."
And just thinking, like, how many projects just got recycled?
I mean, I'm looking around the room and I can see at least 3 piles of cardboard. That's just the good cardboard.
Yeah.
That's just like the piles.
That's the real good stuff. That's the hero cardboard for like the actual production that you're going to have.
That's right. The throwaway stuff. You know, we'll recycle that.
Yeah.
Eventually.
And also, and like all my offcuts for all my wood that I've been collecting is also now, like, I just keep that in its own little box where I'm like, I might need to test some paint later, or I might need it for testing a new drill bit or something, you know, and it has come in useful. But yeah, you amass this stuff, and coming to terms with that is another thing that I've had to do, and I've had to, you know, talk about with my wife and say, like, there needs to be a certain level of stuff in order to continue making these puppets.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So anyway, after making the hand puppet, we then moved on to rod puppets, and I should also say that Bernd does an incredible job, not only talking about showing his own designs, but also kind of talking about the larger context, where he does lots of educational stuff and just talks about, like, where does the tradition of rod puppets come from? And we talked about Vajan Golek and lots of other, like, kind of ancient rod puppetry techniques. But his first thing was make a simple fish. And he made this very simple fish. It's just a jointed puppet on a rod. And you have this very simple mechanism with the strings running to either side of the tail that you just flip, 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 and that's how he goes. And this is it. The design is his. Smooth. The design is his. Thank you. Here, let me see if I can get a little.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. But the design is his, the basic design of the fish, the kind of special flourishes, the color, and the beads for the eyes are mine.
Yeah.
But this was like the next project. And it's the great thing is I've performed puppets like this in shows with you and other people. And like I have that intimate knowledge of kind of how they move, but even just like the basics of how did they actually get formed, like going to the store and getting this eye screw is a decision. There's so many little decisions that get made, and it makes me respect what you do and what other, like, puppet builders do so much, because it's all just knowledge. It's just amassed knowledge and trial and error, and like and little decisions being made so that then this little guy could swim on YouTube.
Yeah. Exactly.
It's really So
well,
he was
and that also like, even if he didn't do anything like that, the knowledge that you need to amass in order to get to that point can be applied all over the place.
Yeah.
Can be applied to all different kinds of puppets that you build in the future or that you work with in the future. Even if you don't, like, even if you're not building them, like you said, you've worked with puppets like that. Knowledge of that comes in handy for performing as well, like knowledge of how they're built.
Absolutely. Yeah, because you can also kind of intuit like how is it intended to move?
Right.
And yeah, so this little guy has been real fun. I'm working on the next puppet, which I don't really have anything to show, but it's a rod puppet of a bird with a kind of a trigger mechanism.
Oh, nice.
Where the bird has flapping little wings that will also tuck into its side, and also a little trigger for its beak, so it'll kind of make its beak move. He says it's the most complex of the entire thing. He said, we're making like a crazy jointed marionette later, and he's like, this bird is more complicated.
Wow. That's
but
cool.
we're also making the controller, like we're cutting out the wood for the controller and cutting the little trigger mechanisms out. And it's great. It's such great fun. And I feel like I'm learning a lot, and he's a wonderful puppeteer and teacher. He's very, very sensitive. And actually one thing that he talked about with this too, and he's really big on, is that we puppeteers that we don't practice manipulation. He was like, now that you've made your hand puppet, you made your fish, you're making all these puppets, practice what it is to actually make them move and tell stories. And for the hand puppet, he gave us a couple of exercises, a couple of like sequences of actions to like go. It's like, enter, look behind you, decide to pick something up, and then walk off the stage. And he said that like, most of us as puppeteers, we just kind of practice when we're about to do something, when we're about to do the show, we rehearse, but there's no kind of upkeep that we usually do in the off season. He says that we should really be more like athletes in that way, where we just practice, we do exercises, and because they are physical skills that need to be kept fresh. And if you're not working, then they can get a little rusty. I'm feeling that as a performer already. I'm I'm a little terrified of what's gonna come out of us in those first few weeks of rehearsal for little horrors.
It's gonna be a rude awakening, having been so comfortable with the show and then taken a year and a half off, almost 2 years, almost 2 years off, right? Well, a year and a half,
yeah, but
a while to not be in those puppets and like having them, in use every day. I mean, it took me a good month of performing the show, like not just previews, but like that month of previews and performances before I felt like I wasn't thinking about the technology of the puppets and like the manipulation, but until I was like really 100% just acting in the moment.
Yes.
Hopefully that's all still stored in there.
Yeah, I think that
here somewhere.
Yeah, I think it is. I really do believe it is, because I feel like the muscle memory comes back so quickly. It's about like having that stamina. It's actually, I think the hardest thing is going to be the mental battle of knowing it's in there, but maybe not necessarily being physically ready, or like getting more tired, not necessarily having the stamina built up, but then wanting to push farther and say, no, I got it. I know I can do this. And making sure to like listen to our bodies. Because that's the other thing is that can happen is so often is like, you know what you have to do, the job. And you have done it in the past, but physically there are limitations, and all of us puppeteers have to be thinking about like the longevity. We got to be thinking about like the long-term success rather than just the gratification of the moment. Because that's when accidents happen.
Yeah, exactly. And with this show, it's just like, because it's so physical. There's no you really have to think about it. It's like a whole body workout. It's not just like, my arm's a little sore that day. It's like, I can't walk.
Like, my buns and my back and my there's a lot of maintenance. That also reminds me too of when we were doing Madama Butterfly at the Met, and the when we would get to rehearse it, because we were understudies, and there was when we actually got to run the thing, because the boy's first introduction, he's on stage for like 20 straight minutes. I think it's something it's like 20 or 30 straight minutes. And that too is like a full body workout, and especially for you on the feet, more so than me.
But he comes running. I mean, he comes running on stage.
Comes like running on stage, and it's like a football field because it's the Metropolitan Opera. Like you're like running to the 50-yard line and taking these little mincing steps, and then you're hunched over and you're up and down and level changes. But then also like you have to keep it alive because you're out there, and like if you let go for 1 second, like that's the game. There were plenty of rehearsals where I was like, just hold it together and like trying to keep the tremor in my body so his head wasn't like shaking all over.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really nuts.
I always remember the visual. You at one point said that first entrance is like a gorilla run for whoever's on there.
Who's on
the feet.
Yeah.
And it's raked, right? It's
the first thing you do is you run across the stage. And for the foot puppeteer, your hands and your feet are on the ground at the same time, and your butt is up in the air so that you can move quickly. And then the last thing you do is that you do that down an incline at the most dramatic moment in the entire show.
I know. Butterfly has her dagger
feet
out there ready to go, and then the most horrifying thought is just this like 6-foot puppeteer just like a rolling down.
I've only gone on once in that show, and that was all that was running through my head in that moment was like, just don't fall. Like just stay on your feet. Fortunately, thankfully I did. Not like, but it was, I mean, it's very physical. Yeah. Terrifying. It's terrifying. Is there more that you're like, are there things that you're doing to prep? I guess also in general, when we had Jonathan on the show, we talked about like the work that you do outside of the rehearsal room and performance. And he talked a lot about making sure that he was completely memorized, completely off book, but that was kind of it, and like in shape for whatever physical things he needed to do, and that was kind of it. Do you have a similar process, or like what do you consider? What do you think about when you're doing the work in the off season or outside of a show?
I was pretty lucky when we first did the show that I had just done a production of it, of Little Shop at a different theater earlier in the year. So I actually felt like pretty good physical shape. Now, after spending so much time off, the thing that's on my mind is I need to just keep going to my classes at the gym. I work out. I work, I actually have in the last couple of weeks. I've been a little lazy. But that's one of my big things is I just need to like keep my conditioning up. And that was when in talks with the physical therapist that we were working with for the show, he said like the main thing that you got to keep up with is your conditioning, because after a couple of weeks you can just lose it. So just making sure that like there is some stamina, that it's not that you're doing a little bit of work. And I think a little bit is always better than nothing.
Yeah.
Even if it's one workout a week, even if it's just doing some stretches in the morning, I think like getting your body ready to move like that is just so important. Yeah. So for me, it's looking like I'm just going to try and really reinvest in my workouts and getting myself into a place that feels good. And I've been considering maybe doing some like semi-private training with like some focuses on the kind of lifting that I'll be doing or core strength, things like that. Mm-hmm. I also recently started taking voice lessons again. Cool. Because one of my jobs for the show is understudying the dentist role and all of the other roles that actor plays. And I also have my own singing to do. And it's been a while. I've done some performing this past year on Zoom readings and some podcasts and things like that, but I haven't really done a lot of singing. And that's another muscle that you got to work out. So so I signed up with a voice teacher, and I'm working with them a little bit before the show starts. And I think that it's less about I forgot how to sing and more so just about putting in the work, having like a regular practice, because I know that I know how to sing, but it's really more so just kind of about like the confidence, like knowing I've been working for this. I'm not just, I haven't been asleep on this for a year and a half. Like I've done something that it's kind of more beating myself at the mental game than anything. So I can go into those rehearsals more confident, just saying like, okay, I have I have prepared a little bit.
Yeah.
That's because it's more so like the feeling of unpreparedness than anything. So yeah, those things, working out, taking voice lessons, I think, and probably in the weeks before, I'll probably start going over the script again and just making sure like I know all the words to the to the songs.
Yeah. It's been coming back into, like, the cast recording has been coming back into rotation for me. Every couple weeks or so, I'll check in on those songs, and fortunately they're all like really excellent songs, and I have very good memories associated with it. So like I can listen to them over and over and over again.
Yeah.
But like starting to wean back into like just getting my head in that space where I'm thinking about it on a daily basis, or planning for it.
Yeah,
I think is important.
Yeah, I like going back to like thinking about just doing a little bit sort of every day, or just like any sort of movement. I recently participated in the O'Neill's National Puppetry Conference online just a couple weeks ago. I was working with Alice Gottschalk, and that was the most fun week. It was really, really great. We're working with the language of material and objects. But another thing that she did for the O'Neill conference is she runs a daily warm up at the beginning of the day for anybody who's involved in the conference. And that hour of just being on a Zoom and walking around my space and doing stretches, gentle stretching into movements, into more kind of physical things, was so beneficial for just waking up my body. And I think that was one of the nicest things to get back to after this year of focusing so much on like little puppets and being stuck in Zoom chairs, was just moving my body in that purposeful way for the purposes of kind of opening up my radio signals to like what else is happening on stage, what's my partner doing on the screen. Like we did partner exercises through the screen, which you'd think wouldn't be successful, but you could do them. Like there's a way of listening and like conversations that can happen. And so like waking up those muscles was so important. And so and from that, I said, like, I really could just like put on some music in the mornings and just kind of move around with some purpose, with a couple of things to focus on. And even that would get me ready to be back in the rehearsal room.
That's cool. What else? How else was the rest of the O'Neill? Because you've been to the O'Neill Puppetry Conference in person before, right? And now were you a part of the conference online last year as well?
I was not. I participated in the master classes that they offered, but this was my first year doing it online, and it was really, really great. I mean, it was wonderful to connect with people again, to connect with so many other puppeteers. There have been a few puppet shindigs that have happened this past year, but it was really great to talk with other artists and to be in a kind of room where we were going to be creative and actually kind of do things and watch each other and give feedback. And I think that, I didn't experience it last year, so I don't know how it went. I think it was very successful though. And this year, I think they just learned from whatever they did last year and made it even better. They got some really wonderful people doing master classes, and everybody's a little bit more Zoom competent now too. Mm-hmm. So I think that, we were all able to do what we needed to do better. But Alice's strand was really wonderful because it was working with people all across the world and all across the country, and using simple things. We were talking about material and objects. And so she said, gather some newspaper or tissue paper and like scarves from your house, and get an apple and some basic string. And it was, using, like I was saying earlier, it was kind of using what you have around you and just discovering what comes out of that and what stories can come out of those everyday objects that are just sitting around us. And so that was also really great. It made me feel, and it was great to be in my own space, because if I didn't have something, if it wasn't in the room, I knew it was downstairs, so I could just run and get it. As opposed to being at the O'Neill, which is also an incredible experience, like being sequestered up there for a week. But it was also nice to be able to be in my own space and to kind of step away from it and take breaks if I needed to.
Yeah. I mean, I can see the O'Neill definitely cultivates a really intense week when you're there in person.
Definitely.
And being able to moderate that a little bit, especially, as people are dealing with their emotions a lot differently than they would be if they were, at that space.
Yeah.
That seems like a really smart idea. Were there other things that you feel like really were something you could only get by doing the O'Neill online that you maybe couldn't have got from going to the O'Neill in person?
Well, one of the things that was interesting was that we, at least specifically in our kind of strand at the O'Neill, we were embracing the technology. We were embracing the use of like the frame of the camera in the work that we were creating. So we were able to do things with the camera, like close-ups and like shift focus, or kind of we did this one exercise where we just flipped our cameras over like on the side and like did a whole exercise like this with some stuff, and saw what that did and created this kind of these disorienting sort of visuals. And I mean, that's something like you couldn't do in person. I think there are clever ways to create those illusions, but it got us thinking in a more, I guess, sort of cinematic way, which was really cool, because that's how we've been working so much this past year, and to be able to explore that in that place was really, really great. And
it sounds like you're in this thinking about how you use objects to tell stories. You remember that the camera you have is also an object, and the frame that you create is also an object that can be used and manipulated in a way to tell a story.
Yeah,
that's really
absolutely.
Cool.
And I think that what was also nice was the use of breakout rooms, like Zoom breakout rooms, and we could have private little chats with people. And I think that was also really nice. I think even though there was the kind of distance of the Zoom, there was time for intimate conversations as well. Which I think sometimes being in your own space also allows you to be a little bit more intimate. There's something like this, the kind of safety of speaking to you from my room on the computer, that I think that maybe I might be more prone to open up, or like to just be more vulnerable, as opposed to being, I don't know, in the cafeteria or something when like tons of people are around and there's lots of stimuli.
Well, it's a little bit more performative sometimes in that respect, where you kind of like have to be on, because there's lots of people around. Whereas like when you're just one-on-one with a person, you can really like kind of drop that artifice a little bit and be a little more true. Yeah,
totally. So yeah, I think those were some of the benefits, for sure.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, we're almost out of time here. We didn't even talk about your skeleton.
We got to show you the skeleton,
which we got to see. This is also for the woodworking class you built.
This was with Puppets in Prague, actually.
Oh, it was for Puppets in Prague.
Yes, this was with Puppets in Prague. So they advertised that they were doing a breakaway skeleton workshop, and it's this traditional Czech breakaway skeleton puppet that is. They showed an example of one that they had access to that was like 100 years old, and this is kind of. And so it's this specific technology. And when I was at the O'Neill a couple years ago, I started developing a show that involved some skeletons, and so that's been kind of percolating in my brain. And when I saw this, I said I must have it. And this was so. I'll bring him out.
Let's see.
Oh.
Yes.
So this is this traditional Czech skeleton, all hand carved, all wooden joints, and he, and so it's built so that he can kind of dance around, and he's like, he can do most of the things like a marionette can do, but he can also start breaking apart. Whoa! Oh no, where'd they go? Oh no! And then come back together. And then whoops! Wait, what happened? And then he's like, "Hey, where'd my body go?" And then hey, there we go. And so this guy is just the most. He's the most fun. I love it. Yeah, it's this really amazing control. He's basically like some of the joints are just holes through which the string travels to a fixed point on the body, and so they travel along those holes, and they travel along those holes, and then not only that, but they are connected to separate things on the head, separate things on the control stick. Not only that, but this is a hybrid control. So I have him in this very kind of a performative sort of like dancey location, but I can also make him look like
a little more relaxed.
Kind of a regular Joe. Joe. And then, whoops. Hello.
This is great.
Yeah, he's great.
Yeah, he looks incredible. That carving is amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And yeah, again, I mean, I think that's one great thing about the Puppets in Prague workshops, where they will pre-cut the things for you. Mirek is excellent at what he does, and so you're starting from a great base, and so it's really just up to you to do the finishing. So it's up to you to just not mess it up.
What do you feel like? What do you feel like? Just in the last couple of minutes, you've taken all of these classes, participated in all these online courses with the woodworking, Puppets in Prague, with Berto Grotnik, with the O'Neill. What are some of the big takeaways that you've gotten from all three of those, or similar takeaways from all three?
Yeah, I think one of the takeaways is that I think is to take inspiration from what's around you.
Mm-hmm.
And to use what's around you to like tell your story. I think with the materials and objects with Alice, and with I think using tissue paper and apples on strings, I think also is connected to when I made my film with Barnaby the Elf, that I didn't have anything but cardboard, and so that's what I did. And so I think that really it was like, there is stuff around you, even if you don't think that you have what you need to tell your story, that you really do. The creative solutions, I think Jean Marie Keevan says elegant solutions, or things like that. But like that's there the stuff is around you for that. So like you can find that inspiration. And I think the other thing is that it's okay to invest in yourself, and to like learn something new, and to like learn from people that know. I think I'm really grateful for this past year of having so much time, and to be able to have the means to afford these classes. But I'm so grateful that I had the time, because for years I was like, I just don't know what to do, and I didn't have the time. I didn't think I had the time to go out and like take these classes or to meet these people, because it interfered with, trying to get a job, or like being in a show, or, trying to pay my bills. And so I'm really, really grateful that I had this time to do this, and to meet with these people, and to connect with these artists around the world. And I think that, so that also tells me that like the people are out there, and they are willing to share their knowledge. And I think I probably would have been too shy to do this before, but now I don't. I think less so. I think that like if you really are interested, like you can reach out to these people through their social media or their websites, and like I think they'd be willing to point you in some direction. Puppeteers really are willing to share what they know, or to help others that are curious. And so I think that's one of the through lines, is like reach out to a puppet friend. And
yeah, it really works.
Yeah.
Well, Teddy, I'm really glad that you're my puppet friend. And
yeah, I'm glad you're my puppet
glad
friend.
that you're here on the show again. And I'm very much looking forward to being back in the room with you for Little Shop. It's going to be an absolute blast.
Yeah, it's going to be the absolute best. I can't wait. I cannot wait.
All right, man. Thank you so much for being here. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you for having me. It was great to be here.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Well, thank you very much, everyone, for joining us on another Puppet Time Online. Be sure to check out some of the programs that Teddy mentioned, the Berto Grotnik program, the Puppets in Prague program, and the O'Neill Puppetry Conference. You can also find out more about us, Puppet Kitchen, at all of our social media websites and puppetkitchen.com. And you can also support this show on Patreon, where you can help us bring more great guests like Teddy to the show. And you can check out more about what Teddy's up to at teddyudain.com. Follow him on Instagram as well. And I think that's about it. Thank you, Katie, for helping keep everything together.
Thank you, Eric.
And thank you all for watching. We'll see you next Wednesday. We're taking off, but we will catch you next time. And just remember, you don't have to do everything to do something. We'll see you next time.